Okay, I'll take a thumbs up for anybody who can hear me online, please. So then, thank you. That's awesome. Welcome, everybody. This is the Hudson River Park Advisory Council. It's June 10th, calling the meeting to order at 6:37. I am Tammy Meltzer, Chair of the Advisory Council, joined by Jessica from Community Board 4 and Susan from Community Board 2. My co-chairs for the Advisory Council. We've got a really big agenda today, so we're going to dive right in. For the attendance form, I beg you all, I sent out the agenda again. So please fill out the attendance form, and that applies to me as well. So we know that you're here and we have a record of you coming. So that's my first plug, and hope that everybody can do that. Alrighty. Secondly, perfect. All right, I'm in. We have the minutes from 2025 that were also linked in the agenda sent out last week. Can I get a vote for approval on the minutes? So moved. That's moved and seconded. Fantastic. So we'll do a vote by affirmation. I'm going to assume that everybody said yes. I call for are there any opposition? Recusals. Fantastic. Motion passes. Thank you so much. All right. First, is Carl with us? Wilson? Is Carl with us online from Councilmember Botcher's office?
Eric Botcher.
Hi. Oh, fantastic.
Oh, you thought you were being layered.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is great.
Thank you.
We'd love an update if you have the opportunity about the Hudson Rail Yards.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. We at the City Council have been in pretty intense negotiations for the past few weeks regarding the Western Rail Yards. First and foremost, I insisted that a casino application be removed from the application. The support was just non-existent for that application for it to have a casino usage. And, after being told it wasn't possible, we got them to remove the casino. And they, I actually had them before we even proceeded any further. I wanted Wynn Resorts to publicly post on social media that they were withdrawing their application, and that is what has happened. We have succeeded in making several improvements to the 2009 Western Rail Yards plan. The Western Rail Yards plan from 2009 had 324 units of affordable housing. This plan, as of today, is up to 620 guaranteed, but 25% of the rentals will be affordable with up to 4,000 rentals. So we could potentially be seeing a lot more. Sorry, I'm getting a call. Let me come back to you. Additionally, we have increased the amount of green space in the application. There was 5.5 acres in total in 2009. In 2025, there's 6.6 acres. We've also improved the layout of the green space. The 2009 plan had private driveways in the park to access the buildings in the west end of the park. Those have been taken out of the park and moved to the outside, and the layout to 33rd Street is vastly better than it was, in my opinion, in 2009. I think one of the most important things is that this is going to get built, and 2009, it was pretty well agreed that wasn't penciling in 2025. So this will be the largest addition to Manhattan's housing stock in decades. 4,000 units with a substantial amount of affordable housing, a new public school, daycare facility, community facility, tens of thousands of jobs, and a commitment to local hiring. And as a Chelsea resident, I really look forward to being able to walk from my apartment up the High Line to Hudson Yards and actually have somewhere to go. And this green space, which will be designed in partnership with the community with an open space advisory process, I think it will be a destination for people all over our community, place to go, and with dining options and outdoor things, not just a shopping mall. So I'm excited about the plan and happy to take any questions.
Have any questions? Yes, state your name for the record and ask away.
Alan Oster, Chelsea Westside Park Association. Thank you, council member. Good news. Any increase in public restrooms?
There is a public restroom requirement as part of the plan. So yes, we will have public restrooms.
Okay, hope so. Thank you.
Alrighty, if you are participating online and have a question, could you put your hand up, please? Hand up function is under React. I see no hands online at the moment, nor any in the room. I want to thank you very, very much, council member, for attending today and bringing what I think many of us on the advisory council call really great news and a great update as we support CB4's resolutions.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, everyone. Really appreciate it.
You're always welcome to stay. Have no fear.
Thank you.
And with that, we want to welcome the Erie Canal 20th anniversary visit of replica canal boat Seneca Chief. Brian, did I get that right? 200. 200? Should I say? I think 200.
Can we bring this? Yeah, feel free to bring it up. And you just will watch the mouse on the side. And if you. Let me see if I can find. Yep, there you go. A little bit further over. Okay. Yeah.
Does that work? Okay, well, while we're getting this set, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Brian Trejak. I'm the executive director of the Buffalo Maritime Center. And this is Chelsea Moore, our education director. Want to thank you for the invite, Mary, for your partnership in getting us here, and then Noreen with everything that we're doing to make this happen. On October 25th and 26th of this year, we will be pulling in with the Erie Canal boat Seneca Chief to commemorate the bicentennial of the Erie Canal. As you can see up here, we are commemorating the canal and celebrating the community all along the way. So for the next couple of minutes, we're going to be talking to you about the project, and then maybe get a couple questions. But I do want to talk about first is that we do call it the Erie Canal boat Seneca Chief, not just the Seneca Chief. But obviously, when we're in the room, we established Erie Canal boat Seneca Chief. Then we could just say Seneca Chief. The reason why is that if I were to say the Seneca Chief is coming to town, what would you think if you knew nothing about the bicentennial, right? So we're giving the context, especially because the boat is named Seneca Chief. There's a lot of relationships at stake here with the indigenous community, and we're going to talk about that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea if she can get to the next thing to talk about Buffalo Maritime Center, what we are.
So we are a nonprofit, obviously from Buffalo, New York. We are a community boat building organization. So we invite the general public to come into our main boat shop, wooden boat shop, and build boats with us. We have 200 volunteers that worked on the Erie Canal boat Seneca Chief, just to give you an idea of how big that project was, with 2 professional master boat builders on the project. But we also have student boat building programs. I'm the education director, so I kind of coordinate those, and we get high school students into the shop. Is anyone familiar with Rocking the Boat?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so we're a very similar organization. We actually meet with Rocking the Boat every couple of years at a conference called Teaching with Small Boats Alliance.
The Tino Village Community Boathouse as well. They're actually part of the park.
Okay.
Village
Oh.
Community Boathouse.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of who we are. So we invite students, public into our facility to learn woodworking, learn boat building. You know, the students come in and they're learning teamwork and pride and all of that good stuff. But we're also a museum. So we have, you know, we're preserving maritime culture. We're getting people out on the waterways every summer in our historic sailboats, in canoes, teaching the general public about our waterways. One of the projects, our biggest project thus far in community boat building has been the Erie Canal Boat Center Chief. And Brian, do you want to talk a little bit about the building of it?
Yes, absolutely. So this started back in the late 90s when our founder, John Montague, still hanging with us and is an amazing guy, thought it would be really good to have something for the bicentennial 25 years from now, sort of situation, right? Next thing you know, it's 2018, 2017, and we start talking about it's getting closer. 2017 was the 200th anniversary of the first shovel that went in the ground of the Erie Canal. And we started learning about all the project, and we started putting things in the paper about that we want to build the boat. Next thing you know, the momentum started building. We had a funder come in and out of nowhere become our benevolent, you know, overlord there that helped out in a good way to help fund this boat. Then all of a sudden, the politicians, no offense, came in and started helping out, and it was great. And they built a building right at Canalside in Buffalo called the Long Shed, where we were able to build this boat, 73 feet long, massive 40-ton boat. Okay. We stayed in there for about 4 years, and this was happening during COVID. We opened this during COVID, which was, as we all remember, was a terrible time, but we made it through. So you want to keep going? So I'm going to go through a bunch of pictures right now, just to give you an idea. We laid the keel. That was the first piece of the whole project, the whole boat, and that came from a gin pole that used to be a crane 100 years ago. So this piece of timber is probably about 200 years old. All right. So we put that together, and then in July of 2021, that was 2020, by the way, we started putting the frames on. And like Chelsea was saying, over 200 volunteers got involved in this, and people came in. They've never built a boat before. Some people have built other things, and we started teaching them along the way. And our master boat builder, Roger Allen, and our lead boat builder, Greg Dudley, worked with them to make that happen. And all of that is white oak. And then you can see starting to put it on the planks. And it's a 2-layer planking now. A lot of people ask, well, is this built in the traditional way? Yes, more or less, right? We put a little bit more into it because we want this boat to last more than 2 years, as compared to what they used to do back in the day, right? So this boat, we're hoping to last for a very long time. So it's 2 layers of cypress with some dine-out fabric in between. The boat still leaks, I will tell you that. So cabin framing, this is all the way December of 2023. This is the boat, and we were building the frame on top. And throughout this process, we started learning more about the history of the Erie Canal. We thought, wow, the canal was a feat of human ingenuity. We need to celebrate this. And then we started looking a bit more into it, and the Erie Canal story became more complex, especially when it comes to the name of Seneca Chief. And we started asking the questions, why was it named Seneca Chief? We don't know why. And we asked some indigenous scholars, they don't know why. Nothing is in writing that Governor DeWitt Clinton said, we want to name this the Seneca Chief. So that was challenging, because we also know that in order to build the Erie Canal, the Haudenosaunee had to be moved out. So how do we build a boat like this, arguably commemorating and celebrating colonialism while still acknowledging that history? So that was a really big challenge we started learning along the way. We'll talk more about that. Keep going. So this was a couple months before February, a couple months before we actually launched. And everybody and their mother and wives came in and started helping. So keep on going there. There's a lot of primer on that. And next thing you know, we are painting April of 2023. That's the boat. And that was about a couple weeks before that thing went out the door. All right. They were really kind to us to let us use this place, but then they said, you got to get out. Okay. So we made it happen. Keep going.
Just dragging it without the bar. Hang on.
Oh, okay. So This is launch day, May 7th, 2024. And we thought we have so much time before we actually end up in New York City. We need all the time we can get, right? But if you scroll up, you can see this boat is hanging by two pieces of wood like this. And it's a 73-foot long boat. And this was a testament to our craftsmanship because the boat didn't hog at all, right? It didn't do anything like that. It does leak in those two spots, just for what it's worth. But we put this on a huge trailer that came in 115 feet long, strapped this all down. These guys were pros putting this on, and we left the long shed, and it was a very emotional experience for, let's say, me. Okay, that's me down there, like trying not to cry. It was like Channel 4 was like 11 o'clock, right before this went out. And they're like, "How do you feel?" I'm like, "Oh my God." Oh my God. And I just lost it on camera. And I'm like, "Did you get anything from that interview?" You know, so, but there was over 1,000 people watching this boat leave that building and then go 5 miles down the road and be launched. Okay, so, and that's it hanging by the two straps there. We put it in the water down in the port of Buffalo. We came back that morning or that afternoon and went under the bridge. You know, that whole low bridge, everybody down. That's exactly what we're talking about right there. Okay, so we brought the boat back in. There you go. It's good. Yeah. So you want to keep on coming? So then, as the boat was leaving, I said to myself, I'm like, now the real project starts, because the construction is one thing, staying on schedule, staying on budget. And no, we were not on budget or on schedule, but we did get the boat out at that time, right? We now have to go to New York City because we said that, right? So on September 24th of this year, we are leaving Buffalo and we will arrive on October 25th to be here October 26th, which is 200 years after the opening of Erie Canal. Now, for all you Erie Canal nerds out there, we also know that on October 26th, DeWitt Clinton left Buffalo. We are arriving in New York City. Why? Because there's no way we're going back across the Erie Canal starting in October 26th, you know, and coming back here in November, right? You see what the trouble, I don't know if you've been hearing about the news in the Erie Canal, it's happening right now. Locks are closing left and right because of the weather. So we're hoping it's going to be good. But navigate 33 days on this voyage, and then we're going to have to go back up to Waterford. We're going to dock at 28 ports along the way. But incidentally, that picture, if you can go back down, that's in Lockport, New York. That's a flight of 5 locks. It's an amazing structure. This is the old locks, and this was the first time the boat had gone in those locks in over like 100 years. So it was a really cool moment. Keep going. Want to keep going?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think the most amazing part of this project is just the community involvement. So we had the 200 volunteers that are helping out build it. We have all of the community able to come watch the build happen. Every stop along the way, like so many people have been following us and taking pictures. Like we've taken, you know, trials along the canal, and you'll see like everyone stops and is like, what is that thing like coming down the canal? So it's been like, you know, it's been a lot of fun just having community be interested in this project in the first place. But you know, so that's obviously one of the huge objectives, is to have community involvement and spread messages to the community that we want to spread. And so we're all craftsmen, we're boat builders. We have students that come into the shop and learn traditional hand tools. And, you know, for the hour and a half, 2 hours they're there, they're not looking at their phone, they're doing hands-on work and, you know, getting into it, like feeling the flow. So that's kind of one of the objectives of this trip as well. Along the way, when we're stopping at these ports, we're going to be doing programming. So people will be able to get on the boat, but we'll also have programming on shore. So people can kind of come up and experience different things that we want them to experience. So one of our objectives is to kind of teach about traditional boat building skills and just craftsmanship in general. Exploring life on the canal. So people were living on these boats 200 years ago. We're going to be living on the boat for 5 weeks, and to, you know, talk about those experiences, identify sustainable practices. It's going to be hard living on a boat for 5 weeks without using plastic, right? So we're trying to kind of spread the word about microplastics and using, you know, teaching kids where their materials are coming from, teaching them how to build something, how much time it takes to build, and then where that material goes when it's done. And just, you know, how many trees does it take to build a boat? So those kind of messages. And then lastly, just the Erie Canal's influence on Buffalo, New York, but also the entire state. So the Erie Canal connected the Hudson River to the Great Lakes. What were the implications for that? Who had to be removed for that to happen? You know, the Erie Canal is aquatic invasive corridor right now, which is highly controversial for people who are working the canal. So just kind of bringing up all of these impacts that the canal had on our communities.
So this is the map. This is where we're going to be going, 28 different stops along the way. All of this is on our website, by the way, buffalomaritimeCenter.org. We have a page all about the bicentennial voyage. We do have a couple of the little packets here. You're welcome to take just a little bit, basically what you're seeing here. But since the first iteration of this, probably a year and a half ago, before the boat was even launched, it hasn't really changed a lot. But what was really important was, where are we going to go in New York City? And it was a great thing, because we then got in touch with Maureen, and we got in touch with her team. Obviously met Mary. We were originally thinking about going by the Intrepid, and then we went there, and then we saw the Intrepid. We're like, we're gonna be this big compared to this thing. Not to mention the 10-foot drop, and then like, oh, there's this thing called tides too. Oh my God. You know, we gotta get a spud barge. We gotta like track people out. It didn't work. And then I think someone mentioned we have this great. I think it was your team with Jim. This great Pier, who does the whole theme is environmentalism. You guys should check this out. We went down there, and there's this little perfect dock for us, and it was a really cool thing. And we saw the big sturgeon. We're really excited about that. But no, it's going to be an amazing thing. The whole conversation was, do we go around the Battery? Do we go to Brooklyn? And as we all know, it's a kind of treacherous waterway in there. There's this thing called Hell's Gate, so we want to stay away from Hell's Gate. So the fact that DeWitt Clinton went all the way down to right off of Sandy Hook and did the Wedding of the Waters, we're not going to do that. We're going to get close, okay? And it's going to be great. So, all right, keep going. Oh, by the way, we are going to be tracking on marinetraffic.com. There's going to be a transponder on our C.L. Churchill tugboat, which we'll talk about in a minute. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, sure. So meet our fleet. So the canal boat, just as canal boats 200 years ago, it does not have a motor, doesn't have sails, it doesn't have paddles. So, 200 years ago, it was pulled by horses and mules. Today, it's pulled by our C.L. Churchill, which is a tugboat that originally was used for the Lois McClure. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that sailing canal boat. But these are the three boats that help navigate the waterways. So the canal boat is 73 feet long. The Churchill is 33 feet long, and it ties up to the side of the canal boat. And, the canal boat's huge. It's a barge, basically. So it doesn't turn well. It doesn't stop well. So we have a little pusher boat called the Buffalo Sail, and that helps kind of work as a bow thruster. So it's pulling or pushing the bow to help steer, or pulling on the stern of the boat to help brake it. So that's kind of our fleet.
And that boat was built in about 6 months, and it just was completed. So that's a good thing.
Yep. So all three are wooden boats. The canal boat, what was I going to say? Oh, the transponder that tracks this kind of the fleet is on the C.L. Churchill, because that's where our radio is. That's where the helm is. So that's where if people were to track the boat, they would type in C.L. Churchill to find out where we are.
And what's going to happen is, when we're in port, we're going to have onshore programming. And the whole project is all about education, educating about the history, and also asking questions about where we're going in the future, right? So you're going to have immersive audio when you step on the board, hearing sounds of what it would have been like on an Erie Canal line boat. Interactive video where you're going to have time lapse of the boat being built, interviews with volunteers along the way, and then the cargo exhibit. What would this boat have carried back in the day, right? So the boat is broken up into a cargo section, passengers quarters, and then crew, right? So you're going to walk through and get an education when it comes to that, and then the cabins exhibit as well. And then on shore, we're going to be doing, obviously there's some displays that we're going to be bringing, but Chelsea and her crew are going to be doing paddle shaping with kids, right? And this is where that sort of flow happens, where the kids sit down and they've never held a draw knife before, and they sit there and start carving out the paddle, and they just get lost in the moment, and it's a really, really neat thing. Yeah. What's that? Is that Manuel? Yeah, that was improv. I can confirm about that. Yeah. We are gonna have speakers, by the way, along the way about, welcome ceremony and people who are going to be adding to the narrative. Like, for example, in Medina, where the Seneca Nation and the Seneca Territory is, we're going to be inviting Seneca people to talk about their experience and what they think about the Erie Canal. And it could be very awkward and challenging sometimes, but that's what we're doing, is we're giving folks the mic to tell the story that needs to be told. Because of this project, and this is something I know we're very proud of, the way that the Erie Canal is being talked about is you hear the word complex a lot. You didn't hear that a couple of years ago, right? So that's something that we want to continue and hopefully flourish.
I'll add one more thing about this. So the boat launched last May, and all last summer we were practicing with the fleet, how to do maneuvers, how to make sure that we could make these boats function and maneuver. But we also did a trial in August where we took the boat from Buffalo to Rochester, and we stopped in Medina, Brockport. So it was a 10-day kind of trial of what this voyage would be. So we're not just jumping in like, hey, never done this before, don't know how these boats function. So, but it gave us practice at stopping at these ports and programming and safety and maneuvering. And so it's been exciting to kind of see, scout all of the ports. Brian and I are on a scouting trip right now where we're, stopping at 8 towns in the last 2 days. And so it's been kind of tested and proven at this point. So 200 years ago, some of you may have heard of the Wedding of the Waters, which was when the original Erie Canal boat Seneca Chief traveled from Buffalo to New York City. They took with them a barrel of water from Lake Erie. It traveled on the Erie Canal down the Hudson, and then it was poured into the Hudson, or the Atlantic Ocean. And that was the Wedding of the Waters. And for the last 5 years, we have been hearing from everybody, oh, they're recreating the voyage and they're recreating the ceremony. And we're, we have to tell them, like, time out, we're not recreating because there's new messages to be had. So 200 years ago, they had this ceremony and it meant certain things for them, where their community was at that time, where they envisioned the future going. It was, this body of water was open for commerce. People could move across and, in the face of progress. And 200 years later, we have a different message.
Now.
So what we're planning on doing is the Gathering of the Waters instead, where we're going to be presenting each town with an Eastern white pine tree. And it's in honor of the Haudenosaunee. It's the tree of peace for them. And it also is representative of sustainability and environmental impact, and kind of taking into consideration how many resources it takes to build things and for us to be here, and we're kind of giving back. So that's the idea of our ceremony this time around.
And I'll say that we do not know where we're planting this. It's something we're talking about. And we're working with Noreen's team about that. So, but in a lot of places, we might not be able to plant it right on that day, but we will be offering it up. So it's a symbolic gesture. And then we will be watering the last tree in New York with the barrel of water from water all across New York State. So instead of dumping it in the ocean, we're going to be nourishing. So. And then, there's just ways to support us. I mean, this is a huge endeavor. We are in the process of raising money, trying to make this happen.
It's okay, I'm on mute. What?
But we encourage you to remember,
I think you could do some more, Elena.
sponsor the bicentennial voyage. There's opportunities for doing that, and then spread the word. What we're asking you guys, though, tell people about this, please. Let people know that this is coming, so that people get excited about it and see this new boat and a different take on the Erie Canal. Because most people you meet probably don't care about the Erie Canal. It's not near here, but New York City would not have been New York City if it weren't for the Erie Canal, right? I'm not adding guilt to this. I'm just saying. you know, you owe us. I'm just throwing it out there. No, but we really want a lot of people to be a part of this, and that October 26th day is going to be a wonderful experience, and we're in the process of talking about that programming and what that might look like. Thanks. And then we just thank you to our sponsors, and that's the boat in Buffalo at a recent event where General Lafayette reenactor came in. It was to celebrate his 20th anniversary. But this is sort of like what it's going to look like, right? The boat's going to be there, right, in the commercial slip or around here, and then there's going to be people lining up and entertaining along the way. So we really appreciate your time, and just want any questions if you have, we'd be happy to do that.
Real quick question, you're not, not gonna get by the Intrepid, you said you're putting in a slip, which slip is it, what pier is it?
It's 26.
26, okay, right, so right next to Mary.
The floating dock.
Yep, gotcha.
We advocated for using for boats.
Go ahead.
Excuse me if you mentioned it, I'm curious, where did the wood come from that built the boat?
So it came from all across the country in a way. So the cypress, which was the paneling on the side, came from North Carolina. The oak came from around Hudson, which was interesting. And then the larch that was used as the interior, that was from around, wasn't it Indiana? That was south of us, and you know, so all across New York State, right? I will tell you that the bolts that were used, we have a machine shop, and we have these wonderful volunteers who have all these skills, and they took bronze rod and they made every bolt, right? Pinned over the head and did the threads, and it would have been a lot of money to buy each one, but it was just an experience to have these guys make these, so it was a really cool thing. So, yeah.
Right, when you bring this up, go ahead, Maureen.
Educational question. What year is it? Do either of you know, or Carrie or Rachel? Then I think all New York State kids learn about the Erie Canal.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade,
Yeah.
Third or fourth grade.
Yeah.
So that's something that, you know, since we do a lot of environmental education and a lot of people
Absolutely.
do too, some of our partners here do. If there's
So
particular
someday,
curriculum that you've got going for this year, that might be something you'd want to share with the broader group.
Yeah, so we can give you more resources on that. When we first started talking about the voyage, everybody was asking like, get kids to the boat. And when we get to the ports, it's like kind of later in, it's later in the day, school's over. But what we are doing is encouraging teachers to track the boat, have kids watch the boat move along the canal and down the Hudson. And then we'll be doing Facebook Lives every day so the kids can kind of tune into that as well. But more than anything, we're trying to encourage families to get the kids excited, to get their families excited, like bring us to the boat. So that's more of the way that we're getting kids to the boat. If we're in a port on a weekday for an entire day, we do have school groups visiting. So like in Waterford, we're there for a day and they're bringing groups we just met with Kingston is bringing 2 school groups. So it's definitely, we're having school groups visit us in Buffalo. I've had hundreds of kids asking already, like teachers asking already. So, yeah. And I think that what's different about our project is that it's very hands-on. So, in our boat shop, we have working hands-on, minds-on, we say. On and getting lectured, they're actually doing things, kind of solidifying that memory.
Not a question, but just a comment, like I hear presentations all the time and hear from different groups, and this is like so incredibly thorough, and the way you approach this relayed from top to bottom is just very impressive and should be a model to how other organizations embrace moments like this.
it's on our website. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's encouraging. So we have a couple months before we see you guys, some things to do before then. And we have been doing these partner visits. So unfortunately, we are going to take our leave and get some rest tonight.
Mary, I think that's another question.
Tomorrow morning.
And then somebody online.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was just gonna say that I was in Buffalo recently for a conference, so I got to visit their workshop and see 4th graders carving canoe paddles on the waterfront. And I think you just got a little peek. They're doing incredible work up there.
Oh, thanks.
Alex, online, go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
Thanks. Just curious if you've connected at all with the folks at Hudson River Community Sailing. They have a pretty robust program for high school students that learn to build boats, and I think this would be an awesome opportunity for synergy for them to come hear about what you're doing.
If you guys have any people
Yeah.
that you think we should reach out to, we're happy to send resources.
Yeah, Hudson River Park Trust will offer to be a conduit for those
That
kinds
would be
of
great.
introductions.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Different organizations while we're here as well, so that's a good thing, so.
Actually, to jump on that, we've had organizations that want to meet us along the way. So like, DEC wants to send fisheries people to a few sites. So we're welcoming that as well. And if you have people who are interested in doing that, like, please connect us with them.
Right.
For sure.
We'll connect you also with the harbor school. It's not in the trust. It's not in Hudson River Park, but they're out on Governor's Island, but it's.
Is that the Billy and Oyster Project? That's where
Yeah.
the hub,
But
okay,
it's
yeah.
out there, those guys, yeah. But the school itself does really.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for staying. We know that you're on your way back.
Yeah.
So.
And then again, we have some brochures here,
Amazing.
but and then contact is in there as well. So thank you all, and we'll see you in October.
And Mary, can you make sure we get a flyer, because our next meeting is September 9th, so we should make sure that we send it out as a reminder with our literature. Alrighty, thank you, everybody. The next group who's presenting is the Battery Park City Authority. I'm gonna let them introduce their entire team because they've got a bunch of folks here. And who's going first? Are we pulling up a slide presentation for them? Okay, fantastic. So introduce yourselves and we'll go from here.
Hi, everybody. Claudia Filomena. I'm the Senior Director of Capital Projects at the Battery Park City Authority. Joined by Kimberly Salt, who's our AVP, or Assistant Vice President, sorry, I speak in acronyms, of Planning and Design. And we're also joined by Nick Bordone, who you may know, who's our Vice President of Public Affairs Communications, and Megan Weaver, who is our Assistant in Communications and Public Affairs. We have very long titles, and I apologize. So we are happy to be here. This is actually the third time we've come to the Advisory Council. We've been here in June the past 2 years. We're happy to be back. I think when we came here in June last year, we talked a lot about our 60% designs for our Northwestern's Legacy project, which we're happy to say is approaching its 90% milestone, which is great. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Northwestern's Legacy project is part of a broader strategy that the Battery Park City Authority has been undertaking since Superstorm Sandy to protect our waterfront. The Northwest Project starts at First Place by the Museum of Jewish Heritage, goes along our waterfront, crosses Route 9A, and then ties into a high point in Tribeca at Greenwich and North North Street. So as I said, we are basically at our 90% milestone, which is great. We also achieved another significant milestone, which some of you may be familiar with. Last year, we had a draft environmental impact statement that was released, and we had a public hearing in September of last year. We got approximately 130 something, that's not really approximately, but 130 something comments, individual comments from people. A lot of significant comments were received regarding the pump station as part of that project. We got comments both from the Advisory Council and the Trust, Riverkeeper, the City Club of New York, Assemblymember Glick, as well as others. And response to those comments are in our, this was not for illustrative purposes, but our final impact statement, which was published at the end of May, which is a large milestone for a project. For those of you who are familiar with the city and state environmental review processes, we began that process in October of 2022. So 2.5 years later, we were able to publish our FEIS. We wanted to come here to talk a little bit about the water quality issues that were raised in a lot of those comments. Because once we got a large number of those comments, we obviously took those concerns very seriously. We wanted to go back with our engineers and also our team just to take a closer look at that. We consulted with both DEP, New York City Department of Environmental Protection, and DEC on potential impacts to the sanctuary from this pump station. And we developed, which I also brought, we developed a memo that's in our environmental impact statement that addresses that in very technical detail. I want to today take the time to go over it sort of more broadly with a higher level. And then obviously, when you have a moment to take a look at our final, I brought probably 20 copies here today, but it's also available on our website. And the responses to all the individual comments received are also in our FEIS on our website. So those are answered in detail as well. So I'm going to talk about the EIS portion of it. Kimberly's going to talk a little bit about where we are in the project right now. And just to give some touch points in the future where we're going to probably come back to you and have a lot more detail just on construction and staging and phasing and things like that. So the pump station that's being designed as part of this project is because of the fact that we are going for FEMA accreditation, which means it will take areas within the project footprint outside of the floodplain. It will basically redraw the existing flood maps, so those areas in Battery Park City, but also those in Tribeca that we're protecting will basically be removed from the floodplain, and in some instances, it'll reduce homeowner insurance if you have a federally backed mortgage. As part of that accreditation, we have to reduce flooding of in excess of more than 1 foot within the project's footprint because it has to be an airtight individual compartment that functions on its own. So we worked closely with DEP to develop a drainage strategy, not only an interior drainage strategy, but also a broader strategy that addresses outfalls and how we would get water out of the site without creating a bathtub effect behind the flood wall. This pump station, as designed, would only operate in the storm event that we were planning for, which is the basically 2050 100-year storm with 2.5 feet of sea level rise. It is not an every single day pump station. Similar to other ones around the city, it's sort of a bit of a unique situation in that respect, that it's only going to be activated in consultation with DEP and other emergency response agencies during a storm event. So just to talk about what is the condition or the no-build condition, as opposed to what it'll be with the project, I'm going to go through some bullets on this and just talk about it more generally. Again, we have more technical detail in this memo, so I would urge people to read it. If there are specific technical questions, we're happy to bring them back to our team who are not with us tonight. So in a no-build condition, the 2050 100-year storm would bring about 5 feet of storm surge within the sanctuary area and adjacent to Battery Park City, and this is about 70 million gallons of volume. This surge would basically elevate the water levels, as you probably imagine, where it would overtop basically the bulkhead, and it would go across the park, across 9A to a high point, which is roughly at Greenwich Street. And basically, when this happens, the initial surge would basically bring this river water in, and then as it goes out, because it's a tidal estuary, it would bring everything from the street into the water. This can be street runoff, it can be scour from the park, it can be combined sewer, it can be debris and contamination from vehicles or from buildings, depending on the extent of flood and the duration. So all of that basically would go into the waterway. And obviously, in addition to these items, discharges from existing outfalls would also be going into the sanctuary and the broader river at this time. So with the project, we're protecting basically about 5 million square feet or 110 acres that would not be subject to this flooding. And during a storm event, when we activate this pump station, basically it would prevent the discharge through the existing outfalls. Normally, sorry, let me correct myself. So what would happen normally is that the outfalls wouldn't be able to discharge until the water was lower in the sanctuary area. So the pumping station allows us to actually discharge when the volumes are higher and there's a higher level of mixing, which is better for the water quality. And we did some calculations on this just in terms of what the current flow would be in the no-build condition and what it would be with the project. And out of the existing outflow, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's sort of where Hudson River Park meets Battery Park City by Stuyvesant High School. During a storm event without the project, that flow would be about 13.8 million gallons. And with our project, it's about 15.9 million gallons. So it's about a 2 million gallon difference. But again, it is pumping at a time where the water levels are higher and there's more mixing, which is, as I said, was better for water quality. Again, we did take a really serious look at this because it was something that we obviously considered, but we wanted to make sure that we considered everything that was possible and whether or not we needed to make alterations based on the feedback we got. That's a very high level summary. Again, But we do have the specific responses, as I said, to people's questions in the response to comments chapter of our EIS. And this memo itself, I'll hand out copies as well if people want them tonight. That goes into more of the technical detail, look, it has visuals and things like that. And just in terms of where we are, you know, we have been working with any number of agencies to do this coordination, as I mentioned, DEC and DEP. But we've also been working, which I think the advisory council is familiar with. We have a joint permit application that was filed with the Army Corps and DEC for the in-water work, which includes the work that will happen adjacent to and within Hudson River Park. That is currently under review by both of those agencies. It's also under review by the Department of State and the Department of State Planning to make sure we meet coastal requirements for both agencies. That has not been approved, and those consultations remain ongoing. We're also still, just to be clear, we're coordinating with many different agencies for permits on this project. This is a large project. It's about 1.3 miles long. And so, as you could probably imagine, this is New York City. There are a dozen agencies that need to sign off on various parts of the project. So we don't go anywhere until everybody has signed off on the piece that is theirs. So we still have a lot of work to do there, and we're going to continue to do that over the coming months. And that includes the regulatory agencies as well. And we've been coordinating a lot, obviously, with the Hudson River Park Trust because they're our neighbors, and we are going to be working in HRPT, in the footprint of HRPT. So we've been working with them also and coordinating with them on various permitting or design items that fall within the park's jurisdiction. We're also just waiting on approvals from utilities and other sort of key players who we can't do work in New York City without, I would say. I'm happy to stop and answer questions. That's just sort of the overview. We also have on our website the full finding statement from our environmental impact statement that was approved by our board 2 weeks ago. And that's available on our website. That goes into a lot more detail about the overall project, not just the areas that are impacted within Hudson River Park.
And we did bring a hard copy.
There's a hard copy.
That we're gonna leave this with you.
So if anyone wants to come by your boarding sometime, instead of the comfort of your own computer, you
Right. Otherwise, chapters are posted individually on our website. So if there's a specific chapter you're interested in, you can just open up that chapter, not the 1,000+ pages that are here.
Can you do me a favor, just to reconfirm, what agencies do you still have that need to approve, specifically the parts that the Hudson River Park Trust might be concerned with, meaning the CSO,
Sure.
the pump station?
Sure.
What agency approvals have not been?
Sure, we haven't gotten approval from DEP. We have to go through the whole DEP permitting process. That's for the CSOs. That's for any tie-ins to the interceptor that runs down that Route 9A, which runs down the middle. That includes the pump station. Those conversations are ongoing, and we're going through a design process, but that hasn't been approved. We have to coordinate with city and state DOT. Like I said, we were sort of coordinating with everybody, but for the work adjacent to Route 9A, obviously that's going to impact, you know, the park in terms of the work is going to be happening right next to it. We have to do a lot of construction for the swing gates that are going to be placed in 9A to close that roadway. Those conversations have just begun in terms of the maintenance and protection of traffic. And we're going to continue to coordinate with the trust on that related to pedestrians, cyclists, and also just regular everyday vehicles moving in and out, because we know that there are a lot of them just for the regular maintenance of the park. So that we really just started those conversations this past week to get that moving along. We anticipate that's going to be a pretty big conversation.
There was a resolution passed by the advisory council that requested and wanted to understand why the Battery Park City Authority couldn't choose and connect to a CSO that went further out into the Hudson versus directly into the Estuarine Sanctuary. Can you review that?
We did there is another outfall that's an M72, which is in Rockefeller Park. Our team did look into that in detail. I, off the top of my head, don't want to answer the question and answer wrong, but I know that we did look at whether or not it could be pumped further out. But I think it wasn't feasible just because of the location of the pump station. We were very limited in terms of siting. And so being able to run it or pump it, I don't think was possible, but I'm happy to go back and reconfirm that. Because I know we did look at it because that was part of the resolution that we got and part of the comments that I got from the advisory council.
You know, definitely looking for information more on that. And as you can see from our agenda, we have DEC who's coming up next to talk about CSOs. And specifically, that part of the park is where we have kayakers, so we have people in the water, and the public mooring is there. So it's really important to understand the anticipated volumes that you have and what information or treatment or anything that you could share with us in terms of what the effects would be on the marine life that's there, and both with that and the work that you're doing behind Stuyvesant through that whole way.
We have details about, in terms of construction impacts, we do have in the EIS, we have details about the construction impacts for sure. And I know,
Just long term.
yeah,
Beyond that.
beyond that, we are putting together a comprehensive habitat monitoring plan, because really we'll talk about it a bit more, but we're proposing some eco enhancements, but just a broader sort of look at the habitats in and around Battery Park City. It's not something we've done before. So we're actually very excited to do it as part of these resiliency projects, but just as a much broader approach to how we look at those things.
Yeah, we've actually just kicked off a meeting with Biohabitats. They're a company that we hired to pull together a plan for us, a monitoring plan. So all the way down from Pier A up through into the estuary. They'll be taking a look. We don't know yet what that looks like, what it will be, but we'll be implementing whatever plan they come up with.
I guess my question would be wearing my Customer Park Trust Advisory, council hat. How does that work with the work that the trust does, which is pretty incredible already with habitat management and monitoring and testing? It seems it's not to be jurisdictional, but it's their land and their space. So having something that's complementary and works dovetail is lovely, but that's not the words that I'm hearing. So I want to.
No, that's exactly what our intent
That's
is.
what our intent. No, that's what our intention is. Before we've talked to the trust about the habitat enhancements we've been proposing as part of the project and gotten their feedback, because they've done this for years and we have not. But also, as we bring this new consultant on board, we want to talk to the trust about best practices and make sure that we're, again, in concert and not doing something that doesn't make sense. Again, this is the first time we're doing it, so we want to take best practices from people who know how to do it. And that's why we're, again, as neighbors, but also just as partners on the project, we want to work with us.
Just to be explicit, that has included, for example, Carrie and other members of our team, not just me. So,
No,
Carrie
it's
and others who actually do the work of science in the park.
Yeah, we've had some great conversations just about our habitat monitoring work to date. We've shared our reports, although they're public, but have also pointed to where we've had successes, where we would like to continue the learning. So, all things likely going in and informing, and having that comparable data is just so key. So it's a conversation that we'll keep talking and dwelling on.
Mary and then Michael.
You said that you have permits from the Army Corps and DEC pending? No, pending.
Pending, yeah.
Okay.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you know if there will be public hearings on those?
The Army Corps had a public hearing, I believe it was earlier this year, I think it was in March, for their portion of the joint permit. There is it was,
No, we didn't see that.
we also were notified later after it was already posted. Yeah, we were also notified late. And I'm not just saying that, actually. We were notified the Monday after the comment period opened. And we have a note, right now, I believe through the end of June, the comment period is open for the speedies permit for the DEC.
Michael, put your hand up next.
Sounds fantastic, and especially the conversations with Carrie and team. I'm wondering, because of the work, and my curiosity always goes to the young scientists that you support, will this increase the opportunities for young people and college students to engage in science learning and maybe get paid?
I think so many of the features we've talked about have existed in the intertidal zone of the bulkhead. So there's a lot of opportunity to include that into programming because it's visible, it's right at the edge. And so how to be thoughtful about that, and how to also maybe use I don't know, interpreters or whatever to help
Right.
expand upon public programming and just, you know, the passerby being able to learn about it.
I hope
Yeah,
that you do find ways to do that from jump, to expand and build upon the work the exciting work that you've shared already with us in this space.
Anybody else in the room necessarily? I guess the other point that Carrie's talking about is expanding programming, like Michael said, and how the passive passer buyer experiences this new space is gonna be important, and how it relates to the moorings. I would suspect that we at some point can have a different mooring.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we talked about this earlier. They don't yet know exactly what their construction staging plan will be. Just every time we do construction, right, where does the barge come? What time of year? Is DEC going to restrict when the barge can come? What time of year? How much can be done? How quickly? So we're going to need that kind of information in order to inform the mooring, spacing, all of that kind of discussion. So they're not ready yet with those kinds of details for us.
We're working through them. We should have them shortly. Like we've been working through them over the past several months. Obviously, it's complicated, as you know, Tammy, too. There's a lot to the project, but especially for the in-water work areas, like we have a lot of complex areas where we're doing in-water work where there's a lot of other uses. For example, around the Battery Park City Ferry Terminal, we're doing work. You know, we have to do a lot of coordination with the Port Authority there as well, just about how that works with the regular operation. So yeah, I think in the coming months, like we'll have more information on that for sure. And in terms of what you're saying about signage, and so like the people above understand what's going on below, we've been working a bit also with our landscape designer Scape on that as well, about how we can make this like really clear of what we're trying to do, but also sort of be aware of what's around you. Even the fact that, you know, our platform's over water, like people don't really know that unless you're staring at maps all day.
Yeah. And we've also been working with Eric to develop a signage program during construction, so people will be aware of like what's happening here, but also, you know, any diverting traffic, diverting bikes, we'll be working with them on that. And then a long-term in our park, we plan on doing a long-term sort of educational signage about these sorts of things too, which is what Claudia was sort of touching on with Scape.
I think one of my last questions, because I always have many, I'm sure I'll have more eventually, is when you get done with the resiliency project, because you have moved to the west side of 9A, right? So you're going along the back of Chambers, crossing 9, going up the middle of 9A, and then crossing over a little bit further north. That means that all of the southernmost tip of the Hudson River Park Trust space up through 25 and everywhere that you are on the west side of still would be part of potential flooding. And so I guess my question is, what kind of modeling has it looked like for what the force will be if the water comes in and hits the walls when it comes back into the park?
We actually have done modeling to look at that, both in earlier, as some of you might be aware, we had many iterations of where this alignment would go. Our team did look at it in multiple instances as the wall moves, like what does it look like in terms of, and especially given that it's title driven, sort of what is the peak and when it runs out. And we've shared that with Maureen and her team also. We have looked at that before.
That'll be interesting to find out, because does that mean potentially?
And I believe it's in our coastal modeling report, actually, it's in our EIS.
In the EIS.
Actually, we have the full coastal modeling report, and I believe that's included as part of the coastal modeling report.
So I guess then my question for Noreen is, does that mean we'll need to take a look at rebuilding that southern part of the park in any way, shape, or form?
Well, the southern part of the park is going to have to be essentially reconstructed, the upland portion, because of the extent of the construction footprint. And that's one of the things that Battery Park City Authority has undertaken. The piers themselves, as you know, are not being touched. And they are, you know, you've heard me in the CB1 context and otherwise say before that it's not really possible for us to do flood walls around our piers because they're skinny, they're long, and no one would ever have a view of anything in order to do that. So So the piers are sort of in a different category. There is a slight elevation change that will happen as the two, Battery Park City and Hudson River Park, meet each other. That'll be done sort of seamlessly by our landscape teams to keep and everything else like that. But Hudson River Park is not fundamentally being elevated as a result of this. We are still our own problem as far as future flooding goes.
The one question I had, and I think we discussed it maybe in the advisory council, I don't know if it's posed. You know, this is kind of Battery Park's independent resiliency project. If, you know, let's say it's even completed and that 50-year storm hits, what actually happens when that surge comes in, if you're only going to North Moore Street? I guess the question is like similar to what we saw naturally happen with Sandy, where, you know, there are low points further upriver, water came in and just flowed down. And I guess the broader question was, that, again, I guess we may not have posed it, but what level of coordination is happening with other, you know, as you go up the river, and what's, you know.
Yeah, I can certainly answer that question. Yeah, in terms of how, you know, for future projects down the road, which I know that there is any number of them that are being looked at, you know, we do keep a coordination in terms of as we've developed the project we've socialized, you know, with state agencies, with the city agencies who are doing projects along the rest of the waterfront, and with the Army Corps, just to make sure everybody knows what everybody else is doing. Again, the timelines are all very different, but I think we try, you know, as we started this broader LMCR strategy, I think we go out of our way to over communicate with each other about what we're doing and like sort of things we found out about our projects as we go. And we'll continue to do that. Even I think what our project has done, continue to like lessons learned and things like that. I think this is very new for everyone to be doing projects like this. So I think we want to share, and we continue to share information as much as we possibly can with anybody who asks, basically.
And I guess
Even the city of Hoboken, like across the river too, we've spoken to the city of Hoboken about their projects as well, so.
And I guess the more concise question is, in the event of this 50-year storm and a 5-foot surge, is Battery Park City resiliency, is it self-contained? Is that going to be a
All of Lower Manhattan, we've been tying into the rest of Lower Manhattan coastal resiliency projects. So
But each project has its own functional, like it's its own compartment.
Yeah.
And so this project, this Northwest project, is its own compartment. So where it ties in at Northmore and Greenwich to where it ties in at the First Place and roughly Battery Place, it's one compartment. So if we didn't have any projects, that area would be protected. And we also are doing that drainage work on the back door side, so it doesn't flood on the back side.
Right.
And then our South Resiliency Project, which is nearing end of construction, that functions as its own sort of compartment that locks, that provides its own protection. And it needs independent function, which is part of the FEMA certification part of the project as well.
But it does provide protection beyond Battery Park.
Right.
The coverage, financial coverage comes.
The long-term operation and maintenance of the project is the authority's responsibility. Pay for the operations maintenance out of our operation budget.
Is that a benefit for?
What Hudson River Park has said from the get-go is you can't add to our costs. So that's basically the straightforward response to that.
Don't disagree with that, depending on what hat I'm wearing, just saying. That's good to know, so thank you, and we'll have an idea of what that will look like as you get closer into final plans. When do you anticipate being at 90% done, so somebody can really see what you're doing?
You mean 90%
Design.
design?
Yeah, so we're like we're fine tuning right now. We're getting a lot of comments from agencies on this draft 90%. There's some areas that are still just being fine tuned. The area, as you could probably imagine, what we call Reach One, which is this 9A around BMCC into Northmore. We're still fine tuning sections of that part of the project.
That's really more like 60%
Yeah.
right now. So
But I think that by I would say July, we should have where we're in a consensus 90% set for this project. And then that'll really sort of have all these areas fleshed out. And you'll be able to see like real detail on the drawings, the planting plans, everything like that.
And then we see that here. We'd love to.
I think we can probably share when we have that as like when we know that it's like signed off by agencies too, because we never want to get ahead of agencies when it comes to their review, as you probably know. But I mean, we're happy to come back to and talk more once we have more detail about the staging and phasing for construction too. Obviously, we know that that's a concern as well. So we're happy to come back and provide more information when we have it for sure. And we're going to be doing some utility work. Stealing some Kimberly's thunder, sorry, but you're doing some like utility work in the fall. Most likely, it's going to be within 9A, and it's going to be hopefully some tide gate work just to get that work done before the bulk of construction starts. So we're kind of shooting for that right now.
early works, yeah.
We're calling them early works, just to try to get that sometimes most painful part of it, which is moving utility lines and things like that out of the way, so we can just start construction in earnest when we're ready. When we have all of our permits, obviously.
Alrighty, I don't see any other hands up in the room or online.
We just have, I guess, one more thing, just we wanted to say while we're here today.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, we just wanted to say that we will be contributing to the estuarian. So just wanted to the good news.
What does that mean? I mean, there's contributions and there's contributions. What are we talking about?
I mean, no, we're gonna be making like a considerable contribution to the estuarium to help offset, impacts to the park during construction. So we're very happy about it. We're happy to contribute. Obviously, it's been a long-term goal of the trust to build this estuarium, so we're happy to.
It was our idea that this would be a meaningful way to give back to the sanctuary, since there's construction in the sanctuary. Since there is a huge disruption to this Tribeca section of Hudson River Park, so it's a project that it's a locally based project as well. And as everyone knows, it's been darn hard getting all the funding together for the estuarium. So a meaningful contribution to the estuarium is meaningful to, we think, Hudson River Park.
What is meaning? Like, is it money? They're just giving
Yes, money.
How much money?
Enough to get it built.
No, we're not. I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, I can tell you that.
Hey, a girl can
No,
hope,
a girl
right?
can hope. No, but let's say it's in, it's in a range that is better than, probably than some of the other contributions that we have at this point, and it's a sizable step forward for us.
Yeah, it's a really broad question, but what is gonna be the impact, environmentally when this expansion onto the park?
I mean, there are two things that I can say about this. I'm not going to comment on the CSOs. Their tech memo does all of that. Hudson River Park has built our own things in the water in the sanctuary, and we've done it for 25 years. We've expanded the new expanded walkway at Chelsea Pier is an example of a platform coverage that makes formerly a very narrow area more generous from a public walking perspective. We have to do our own environmental reviews over the years when that happens. There is temporary construction impact for sure when you're driving piles. And then after that, fish sort of get used to, fish get used, Carrie can talk more about this, but there's boats, there's construction of all kinds that happens in all of our waterways all the time. After construction, it gets calmer again. And the plan is to do environmental enhancements on the future structure that we are working together on with, assuming that the Army Corps and DEC like those things. We're not the final arbiters on that, but we've encouraged the idea of a habitat enhancement to be incorporated into the physical structure
The new seawall.
in the expansion.
Yeah.
So really simply, wildlife leaves and it comes back and things are gone.
I wouldn't,
That's very simple.
I don't want to be quoted saying that, but from the scale of the expansion of this project, it is not a mammoth new incursion into the sanctuary.
It's normalized.
It's scaled. And it's within a scale that is known for other public projects, including Hudson River Park, things we've done ourselves in other portions of the sanctuary.
And that only includes the southern end of that.
We're like Hudson River Park keeps blinders on for this, so the only thing I'm talking about here is the expansion of the northernmost
Right
end
in
of
front of
theirs.
Stuyvesant.
In, yeah, in,
Our investment on it.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So-
just noting that, the bulkhead is considered an area that has a ton of potential, but is less productive in offering habitat. So many of the habitat kind of solutions and enhancements that they're considering will be, of course, adding to the robustness of that specific location and then the pilings that are holding up that area. So that is super exciting. And hopefully, will be an amazing future for that section.
Well, I want to thank you. I'm curious to hear what DEC has to say about CSO overflows and the additional overflow and how that may impact whatever enhancements you're doing. Because that's one of those things that the combination of those two has to be well planned, well thought out. I know you have the team to do it, but it is a concern that was raised here as well. Right? All right, so with that, I want to say thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having us.
We look forward to hearing and seeing the new plan, so, visuals, pictures say 1,000 words.
Also, feel free to take a technical memo on water quality homes if you feel like it.
Oh, yes, we do.
Yes. We have hopefully enough for most people, but here you go.
Bedtime reading.
And very exciting bedtime reading, but we also, like I said, it's on our website. The responses to everybody's public comments are also on our website. So
Big form, fast down. As
thank you very much for having us, as always.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. And with that, we're gonna move. I'm gonna stop the camera right here because our next presenters are online. So thank you so much. For everybody in the room, we want to welcome the team Sullivan Southwell, and I hope I pronounced that properly.
That's accurate.
He was kind to send us responses to our initial outreach and questions, of which all of that was updated on the agenda, including a second, it says response to map. So if you have the agenda, which I resent this afternoon, we'll have a lot of the information that he's going through, and I can also share it if we need to. But Selwyn, it's up to you how you would like to proceed, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the Advisory Council for inviting DEC to this discussion. And as you said, my name is Sullivan Southwell. I am the regional water engineer here in New York City. I manage the Division of Water, the water program in the 5 boroughs. So what I would like to do though is, and of course, I recognize that CSOs is of primary concern. Just looking at some of the questions that was passed on to me. And also not just, well, CSOs being of primary importance, but also the information that's out there as to exactly where they are, where they're located relative to the park. What I would like to say is we do have I think it's a very a nifty tool. We refer to it as the info locator, and you can get lots of information there, but I'm going to focus on the location of CSO outfalls. It's I provided the link, and if you did a Google of New York State DEC inflow locator, you would be guaranteed to get it. That database has a number of layers, and with regards to CSOs, you can essentially map all of the CSOs
around the 5 boroughs of New York City. Now, one thing that might be a little confusing because of the scale of the map, say, of Manhattan, and the icons that are used to designate each of the CSO outfall, it may not be exactly clear exactly an exact location of the outfall. So it may appear that it's, say, in the park, for instance, and it's not. Or another fact is that the outfalls are many of them are actually are some, or I don't want to speculate because they are various distances into the Hudson. It's not on, it's not a, we're not talking about a shoreside discharge. It's not a near field discharge for most of these outfalls. They're in the water body. Um, but for obvious reasons, that it makes more sense. The water body would be able to assimilate much more readily in scenarios such as that. Um, so, uh, the information is out there. Also, and as if that's not enough, the outfalls along the Hudson or falls within the drainage area of, for those, I'm sure many of you are aware of the Wards Island Treatment Plant and the North River. Many of them are North River, some the southern end, the southern tip of, or that's the west side of Manhattan. Those go to Wards Island. If you obtain copies of the Wards Island Speedies permit and the North River Speedies permit, you will have a list of all the outfalls with the latitude and longitude. So you can actually plot exactly where they are. So there are a number of ways you can actually get that information as to the exact location of the outfalls. With respect to what's being done, I mean, I think most of you on the call are aware of the um, CSO abatement program, we can call it that, between DEC and New York City DEP. It's been going on for decades. Many of the requirements are now codified in the Speedies permits. And in a nutshell, it's maximizing the capacity of the sewer system, uh, cleaning the sewer system and the interceptors to ensure the capacity is maintained. Same for regulators, and I might be referring to some parts of the infrastructure that may not be uh, everyone may not be fully aware of them, but essentially is increasing the capacity of the sewer system. If you do that, you have less overflow. Now, similarly, for the wastewater treatment plants, that's also the approach. And these are all requirements in the Speedies permits on or what we refer to as CSO, the CSO best management practices plans. Um, the wastewater treatment plans has wet weather operating plans. And whenever rain is in the forecast, the wastewater treatment plants has to make adjustments in their operation so as to increase the capacity of the plant so that more they can treat higher volume and thereby releasing less CSOs, less combined sewer. Um, the the one thing that is that I must note though is and I haven't even talked about the long-term control plans. Um, uh, the all of the requirements that are geared towards reducing CSOs are in 11 specific long-term control plans for various water bodies. Jamaica Bay, Alley Creek, East River, and so on and so on. It so happens that the Hudson River falls under the citywide open waters long-term control plan, and the requirements under that plan it impacts only to I would say, doesn't impact greatly on the outfalls that are close to or in the proximity of the Hudson River Park. So that's an unfortunate thing. However, when we look at the numbers, and I think I provided this in um, the summary response that I submitted to the council, the quality of going back from, I guess, the 80s, 90s to more recently, there's been a dramatic improvement in the quality of the water in and around the Hudson River. So it's clearly we can make the assumption that the efforts that are being made citywide and in particular in the Hudson are actually working. And we're seeing the benefits of these measures that have been in the works for quite some time. So that's basically what I wanted to say in a nutshell. And if there's any specific questions on anything else, I'd be more than willing to uh, respond or take it back to the team and discuss and get back with Tammy or someone else with a response.
There were questions that we had about that. Does anyone?
No, you're a little low.
Looking around the room to see who has questions. So if
Oh, okay, go ahead. Mhm.
I'm moving, but not necessarily hands up. So it's always, go ahead, Martin.
Thanks. So, one of the things I was just curious about, I get the, OEM sends out the water body advisories. I'm not sure if that's actually DEC or if that's DEB that does the modeling for those notifications.
The wet weather, well, it depends on the advisory. Advisories are sent out are sometime, well, by the health department if it's in the bathing season for beaches. You also have these advisories that are sent out. And are you referring to the Nile alerts or something different?
It basically goes by location, and it's I believe based on rain
Wet weather.
in the past 24 hours.
Yes, I would say those are being sent out by New York City DEP.
Red areas, based on, and I guess my question was, I think this is modeled on rainfall amounts.
Yes.
There's something in like Hoboken where they have actual real-time gauges that can identify when specific CSOs are activated. And I get, my general question was, is there anything, any plans for something more real time like that for our CSOs? Given, some of the stuff DEC is doing about upgrading the swimmability of the Hudson, the Harlem rivers, are we gonna maybe have better real-time information on the impact of the sea, in real time?
Yes. Now, the city, and this is quite some time ago, were required to install real-time telemetry in are it's 102 of their CSOs. And that number was chosen based on the proximity to bathing beaches and also to the volume of the size and capacity of the outfall. So that has been real time. It's referred to as SCADA system, real time telemetry. So they don't have to go out to a site, to the shoreline, to know when it's information that's provided or remotely to LEFRAC, their main office. So the city of New York has that already in place. Now, mind you, it is 102. And I think if we look at the CSO outfalls, it's in, don't quote me on this, like 460, 470 something. But obviously it's a very uh, hostile environment that the at an outfall, and the it, the city and I think the state agreed that it would be better if they focused on those that would be more impactful when they do overflow. So that is actually and it has been for some time. And it's something that's ongoing. So we know real time what's and and by the way, that's how the city of New York is able to issue some of these advisories because they in the at LEFRAC, their main office, they will see that this particular outfall is bypassing a CSO outfall, and they would on that basis send the advisory out. But just based on the fact, for instance, I've been working at DEC for quite some time, so I know if there is a fair amount of rainfall, I don't need the telemetry information to know that you're going to have a CSO discharge. I may not know exactly which outfalls, and that's the benefit of having the telemetry system. But it doesn't take a torrential rain event to lead to a CSO discharge.
Yes. Thank you for coming, Mr. Southwell. I represent Community Board 4, which is Hell's Kitchen, Chelsea, the west side of Midtown Manhattan. I don't know if you could hear me. So
I'm trying to, and it's probably on my end. I don't have the best equipment. No, I'm trying to. I hear that you are Chelsea and
west side of Midtown Manhattan.
okay.
District is right now encountering a lot of major projects down the road, like new NYCHA redevelopment,
Yes.
a lot of big projects. And when these EISs come or DEISs come and we comment on them, there doesn't seem to be a mechanism to consider them collectively and their discharge into the Hudson River. We comment on these environmental statements separately. And we know this is coming up at a future meeting, but is there any mechanism for the DEC to consider these projects? Because we want to know the cumulative effect of what these huge projects are having on the Hudson River, and we can't seem to find a mechanism for that.
Right. Now, so and impact, you referring to overall impact or impact during construction or post-construction?
Post-construction, no, we're not construction, like wastewater, everything going into the Hudson.
Oh,
River.
okay, I get you. Extra wastewater, added stress on the sewer system and the treatment plants. I see what you mean. Now, New York City is required to, whenever there is a connection to a sewer connection, sanitary sewer connection to a particular wastewater treatment plant, they're required to evaluate and determine whether or not that additional flow will impact one, impact the wastewater treatment plant, and two, lead to additional CSOs. It so happens, and for the CSOs, I'll put that to a side because it's a more difficult analysis. But for the sanitary flows during dry weather to the wastewater treatment plant, what we have found is most of the wastewater treatment plants are well below their design capacity. And there's a reason for that. Because of ongoing decades of low flow fixtures, water conservation measures, um, believe it or not, the reduction of population in New York City. All of those combine to creating a situation where the wastewater treatment plants, their capacity, they're well below their capacity. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example so you'd understand. The North, and I think I'm choosing a very good plant actually, because we're talking about, the Hudson River Park. Let's talk about the North River wastewater treatment plants very quickly. I don't want to bore you with the stuff. But there in the it was 1994 when North River had exceeded its design capacity, which was 170 million gallons per day. There was discussion within DEC of putting a moratorium so that no additional hookups could occur to the North River treatment plant. Obviously, probably is not something that could have happened. We're talking about Manhattan. So politically, that could be devastating. Putting that aside, they were exceeding 170. Today, the sanitary flows to North River is less than 115 million gallons per day. What happened? You know, that is a astronomical reduction. And so that's an extreme case. What we see that plant after plant after plant. So that's the sanitary side. And in some ways, if you have um, sanitary dry weather, if you're receiving less flow during dry weather, when it starts to rain, you do have that buffer that one could argue, and no, it's an actual fact that you would be able to um, reduce the amount of CSOs by that number, right? So so that's something that we're seeing across the board. I don't see a plant that is now North River is an extreme example, so let's not get carried away. That is mind-boggling. The others, say, such as Ward's Island, that do take some flows from Manhattan, mostly the lower west side, just around, the tip of Manhattan. They also, you see some reduction. I don't think it's nearly as significant as what we see at North River. So but once when these projects are being considered, eh, an environmental impact statement has to be completed. Has to be completed. And I guess at the end of the day, that would determine whether or not a project, you know, is given the green light. What are the findings of the EIS? Is it a go or no go?
Do we have more questions in the room? Or I know Andrew had a question online, but he is also in transit. Andrew, are you at a point that you can unmute and ask? Right, exactly. I know one of the things that Andrew had asked earlier in the question was taking a look at the CSO overflows that go directly into the sanctuary. Can we get historical data in terms of, you sent us a map that showed that the water quality overall is getting much better, which is really delightful to see, since 1985 to 2008, I think the two maps. That looks all super positive, but do we have an idea where within the sanctuary grounds are the CSOs that have the most impact on our waters and our wildlife?
Right. So essentially you want to drill down in get more specific as to what that impact is in the sanctuary instead of giving you that the big picture.
Yes.
I don't have that, but I certainly will take it back and see if we can get something to you as to what the the impacts, if any, are to the sanctuary caused by these ongoing CSOs.
That'd be great. And especially, I mean, if one has improved over time, that's good to know. If some have gotten worse over time, that's good to know, especially where. So I would think that that'd be important to the Battery Park City Authority as well. So they would be able to know what they're dealing with, because if it's a CSO that's over by Pier 25, it completely affects what you're doing on the seawall, and whatever CSO overflow comes from the new pump station.
Yeah.
From that location as well. And having data for that specific location is one of the things that we were asked previously. Unfortunately, the main CSO questionnaire, he's not here tonight.
Yeah.
He's in Toronto.
But he would, well, actually. But yes, there is actually in Carriage by where there's a CSO in the Pier 26 sanctuary area as well. And I guess that's similar to my, going back to, I think you mentioned there being gauges at specific CSOs that were near bathing beaches, etc. Maybe is there any thought to reviewing that list and looking at other areas as Tammy is suggesting, that may have other, be in other environmentally sensitive areas?
Oh, absolutely. I think DEC would always be open to adding areas justifiably, if it's justified. Clearly, if an area has become sensitive, it should be added to the list, because that's how we came up with the list in the first place, by identifying sensitive water bodies and beach, sensitive beaches nearby. I would say, I would expect that DEC would look at that and said yes. And of course, we have to get DEP to uh, get busy and get to work. But yes, sensitive areas, that sensitive water bodies, that's key, and it makes a lot of sense.
Sullivan, I think I don't see any other hands up.
Tammy, could I just ask?
Noreen, yeah.
Hi, Sullivan, it's Noreen Doyle from Hudson River Park.
Oh, hi.
Could I ask you to do one thing, which I think I know to be the case, but if it is the case, I think would help everyone here?
Mm-hmm.
Our DEP's regulator, right? Could you just sort of explain the relationship between DEC and DEP in this regard? Because I think it would help people.
Our relationship in terms of
Oversight, your,
oh,
like the relationship between DEC and DEP with respect to oversight.
okay. So we are obviously are the regulator, right? As you stated. Many of these, and I don't want to get myself into any hot water here, right? But many of these issues are very, very, very complex, costly, and requires a lot of study. The studies are done by, obviously, the cost of the studies are primarily done by DEP, and there has to be some uh, uh, discussion. I don't want to use the term negotiation because it's not, but DEP has to make a case based on cost, based on potential environmental or impacts. And we have to look at, I'm sure you're familiar with the term the near the curve, you know. You could spend $10 million and you get a certain amount of treatment, and you spend 20 and you get a millimeter more when you look at the curve. So all that comes into play. So the relationship is one of um, looking at um, the data, obtaining the information. It cannot be, and it's never should be based on, well, we want DEP to clean up the Hudson River. Because, and just to, add to that, some people would argue that why do we have combined sewers? Why not rip up all the combined sewer in Manhattan and replace them with a storm sewer and have two pipes everywhere in New York City, right? And I've had that question directed to me by really intelligent people. Like, why do you allow CSOs? That's like obscene, right? Because they felt like that's allowing sewage to be discharged into a water body, not recognizing that hundreds of years ago, someone thought it was best to have one pipe in Manhattan. And today, in order to separate the sewer, have separate sewers, that would effectively eliminate all CSOs. If we were able to get into areas, whether it's the Bronx, which is almost all combined, Manhattan, large areas, other large areas in other boroughs, um, the cost would be off the chain. It would be astronomical. forget about the cost. Manhattan is not possible. It'll destroy business. All the roads would have to be excavated and an additional pipe would have to be installed. So that's an extreme situation, but it comes back to we got to be practical. There has to be a practical consideration to all this. So in a nutshell, our relationship with DEP is one of looking at the facts, looking at the numbers, looking at the data, and coming up with the best approach. Now, of course, I think we push DEP to the limits um, in most instances. You know, when DEP thinks they can only do uh, X, we have them do X plus 10. You know, so you know, but we always have to consider what the reality of the situation is. So if might have been a little bit roundabout for you, and I might have skirted the issue, but that's how I would characterize the relationship.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I don't think I have any other hands in the room and seeing no hands online. So then I really appreciate you coming today. I'm sure we will have more questions come
Okay.
that we will send you. But yeah, if you can get back to us for the September 9th meeting, if you don't mind coming back, or whomever else does, with the detailed information on the CSOs in the park specific and the sanctuary, that would be fantastic.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Noreen. It's up to you. You want to start with Chris?
Sure. All right. Try to move this along. Just a couple of incidents that, you know, I highlighted in our report on May 18th. Park patron approached PEP officers at Pier 40. She said she lost her two 8-year-old daughters that were rollerblading in the park, and they were last seen 25 minutes ago at the Gansevoort Peninsula by the beach. PEP officers conducted a search, were able to quickly locate them using our camera system, intercept the kids at Jane Street, reunite them with the mother. It was a great story.
So am I free to leave? I don't know what the other parts of the agenda, if I'm needed.
Stay if you do not wish to stay. We appreciate you coming, but I hope you have an enjoyable evening. Our last part of the agenda is all the Hudson River Park Trust reports.
Okay. So, okay, thank you very much. And I'll be happy to come back and if I need to clarify anything or add or there's some additional questions that need to be addressed, I'll be happy to and there may be others as well. You know, we have some subject matter experts that I'm sure they would not mind giving you their take on some of these issues.
All righty. Well, we will see you in September then. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. You guys take care. Have a great evening.
Chris?
All right, I'll try to go quick here. Sad news, on May 27th at 6:50, we had a 40-year-old male jogger that experienced a cardiac incident as he was on the Esplanade by Gansevoort Peninsula. A past HRPT employee saw the incident, called 911, then the operations desk for PEP to respond. Members of the FDNY Marine 1 unit that's stationed at Gansevoort were flagged down and quickly began CPR. New York City EMS subsequently arrived and continued administering CPR, removing the jogger to Northwell Greenwich Village Hospital. It was later reported to us that unfortunately the jogger did not survive. But the important part, some of the things I wanted to point out was that we followed procedures and that FDNY Marine 1 was there right away. It was a great help. I'll skip to, we had a couple of water incidents on this report, but I want to give a shout out to Pier 66 Boathouse. On Sunday, June 8th, a male jumped into the river off the Pier 66 floating dock Shortly after, it seemed he was floating north in the river. He was rescued by members of the Pier the 66 boathouse, and they pulled him out of the water onto one of their boats. PEP interviewed and evaluated him, and afterwards issued him a warning and escorted him out of the park. Lately, we've been busy with planning. We've been conducting weekly planning meetings for the upcoming Pride weekend in HRP. I've been in regular communication with NYPD and have also attended NYPD interagency meetings with other city agencies and event producers to plan and address the operational and public safety concerns for the upcoming Pride events. On Monday, yes, I attended a conference with the NYPD Shield organization, where among other things, we discussed the 2025 FIFA World Cup that's going to be in the US between June 15th and July 13th, and also planning for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which will be a much bigger event taking place in the North America in 3 countries, and Canada, Mexico, and the US between July 11th and July 19th, 2026. And I think that's about it for there. Yes.
What was the activity today around, I guess it was Canal Street? Was ambulances, was a stretcher coming out of the water?
They removed a body from the river, unrelated to the park, which I guess it's the season and the warm weather we've had over the last 2 months. I think that's the 4th occasion.
We had 2 down in St.
Yeah.
So what's your efficacy?
Well, I mean, there's this part of the river, and then we've had
It's
1 or 2 further south than the park, so.
right. It's from the
So these
NYPD
photos
finds.
of people that died a while ago? Is that what you said?
I don't have too many details. It could be anywhere in the river or the harbor, but it's where NYPD finds it easiest to meet the medical examiner and, remove the body.
I'm gonna tell people about the recent spurt of naked people.
Yeah, I was moving along, but we have had,
More like personal activity.
it seems to be the season. We've experienced a lot of emotionally disturbed people in the park recently. Luckily, none violent. There was one person that was menacing people with the knife, but he was moving along. It didn't appear to be too dangerous, and NYPD took him into custody. Other than that, I've noticed there's been a lot of emotionally disturbed people that are just naked, not violent, just walking through the park and have been removed to psychiatric evaluation just for their own well-being, not a danger to others.
Yes. Okay. Next. Oh, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question on the individual who I think you characterized as having jumped into the water. I'm not sure the circumstances, but with something like that, is that reported to authorities, and is there any type of mental health check or assessment?
Yeah, yes. So I skipped over one. We had one earlier in the month at Pier 46, where a person jumped into the river. He was able to get out, and by the time PEP arrived, he was already out of the water, and then NYPD arrived. They interviewed him and evaluated him and determined that it was best that he go to a hospital for evaluation. The one at Pier 66 Boathouse, they brought him up, they sat him down in the little table and chairs up on the esplanade, spoke to him for a while, and determined that it wasn't to mandate that someone go for this type of evaluation. They have to be considered an imminent risk to themselves or others. They didn't consider it that way. They just considered it poor judgment on his part, gave him a warning and sent him and walked him out of the park.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. If no other questions, let's move on to the next topic. And the trust report.
We wanted to quickly emphasize some of the growth in our visiting scholar program. So we've continued a really exciting relationship with CUNY Office of Research, where we're providing grant funding to 2 visiting scholars and their students. So this season we have 2 recipients, one from Baruch College, Anna Gonzalez-Nyack. She's going to be advancing some of our research at Gansevoort Peninsula. We're interested in some of the conditions and mechanisms at play around spat settlement. Getting these oyster reefs to be sustaining themselves over time is critical to these habitat structures, having longevity and building kind of the habitat value. So she's going to be looking at the relationship of spat recruitment and specifically these microbial mats. And an undergrad student's going to be helping her as they advance their senior thesis project, which is really exciting. We haven't had an undergrad helping at these projects that we funded to date. And then Dr. Karen Block, she's with City College University. She's actually a geochemist, so she's interested in asking questions around bivalves. And similar to tree rings, you can learn about historical environmental conditions looking at the different kind of ring and signatures in the hard tissue shell of bivalves. So she's going to be analyzing this and thinking bigger picture about some of the climate implications that she can derive from looking at blue mussels, rib mussels, and oysters that are living throughout Hudson River Park. Beyond that, we have over like 14 right now, almost. We just had a conversation last week with someone from NYU, but 14 visiting scholars that are going to be pursuing projects in the park. They're from universities throughout New York City. So many of the CUNYs, also Barnard, NYU, Cornell. And so this is really what it looks like to advance our estuarine sanctuary research and habitat piece and commitment. It's these partnerships where we're including these faculty members, these experts, they're bringing in their students. Our staff is providing hands, physical support, access, also our instrumentation, our local expertise, and all of their research is shared publicly. We have an annual sanctuary science meeting where we share it, and we post their papers, their posters on Hudson River Park's website. So you can check out our visiting scholar page. And then I also just wanted to say, we want to fund and support colleges that are 4 years and community colleges. So we also found a way to support a hydroacoustic survey this year, really interested in the impacts of noise pollution. And so there'll be a mapping project by a professor from LaGuardia Community College. And we found money through another CUNY initiative called CRISP to support them. And then, getting funding for these projects, we've talked a lot about our federal grants, our state grants, but we're also being proactive about kind of tapping into private funding. So we're really excited to share that our FAO Schwartz Fellow will be with us for the next 2 years. They just started last week, and they are supporting the salary while the trust is paying for the benefits related to that staff member. Her name is Genevieve Joseph. She comes from Spelman College, and she has an immense background in doing mentorship and environmental ed, but then also is really excited to help with some of our impact reporting around the sanctuary. And then also we've had this commitment to our fish ecology survey, but also exploring new tools to consider biodiversity surveys in the river. And so we have just applied to Lounsbury Foundation. It's a private foundation to support a network that we have initiated and we process all the data for. And it's an environmental DNA survey. We're looking at the southern 85 miles of river with partners from the state, partners at Lamont Doherty, Curb and BSAC, and Governor's Island and ourselves. And this is a really interesting project that complement traditional fish surveying methods. And we've had some really positive conversations. This project stems from Hudson River Foundation and being interested in this tool of environmental DNA back when Dennis was, leading their science department. And it's just an exciting evolution of how this tool is now being used in most habitat projects to look at change over time of fish communities. And we are happy to be advancing that in the region. Then, of course, we've got tons of events coming up, so continue checking our calendar. Ask a Scientist is really expanding this season, so a lot of great lectures where these scientists will be sharing their research in some fun and interesting ways. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
And we're at over 2 hours, so I will keep it to 5 minutes.
Thank
But
you, I really appreciate it.
there is so much going on. You all know how to find me, but we had our second large community design meeting for the area from north of Pier 79 to Pier 84 a couple of weeks ago. Our design team was there sharing back sort of preliminary ideas based on earlier public feedback that we got. That area of the park is just so much pavement. It's so much driveway. It's not like the lower section of Hudson River Park, and we're just so happy to finally be able to be introducing some green that community really needs. So we will be going back to talk with Community Board 4, and we will continue this process. Concessions, some of you who have people that play sports at Chelsea Waterside or at Gansevoort will be happy to know that we actually have a signed agreement with a concessionaire for Gansevoort. The concessionaire has a small restaurant in Tribeca called a family restaurant, Benvenuto, that some of you may know. So we're gonna actually have, I think, a nice food establishment there with wine and beer is also going to be allowed to be served there at that spot. It takes a while to get all the full approvals for everything, so they'll be operating in kind of a pop-up capacity while they get their fuller permits. We're working on Chelsea Waterside as well. I don't have a name there. That is a less, there's less foot traffic, so we get less response for that kind of thing, but we have a solution for this summer, we think there. And we also struggle broadly often to get an operator for the carousel, but we have worked something out. That person, I think, was getting their required DOB operator inspection today. And this is not really a big money maker for us. The carousel was built as more like part of the landscape. And if we don't have it in operation, it's sort of a blight on Pier 62. So we worked very hard beating the bushes, our team, to get somebody that would actually operate it. Anyway, that's good news. We are working away on getting bids for all of the incredibly expensive, incredibly elaborate capital work that's going to need to happen at Pier 40 over a multi-year period. And we will, once we have some prices that our team has actually vetted, that's something that we can share with you. But the scope of that work, as I think Robert has explained, affects every corner of Pier 40. It's a combination of mandatory inspections related to the garage and fire suppression upgrades and loading dock and windows that leak and. We are doing, it's event season for education and environment, also for our regular public programming. We have a couple of things only that I'll highlight. On Friday, June 20th, we have a Juneteenth celebration, Ladies of Hip Hop Dance Collaborative at Pier 45. We have a Pride celebration on Thursday, June 26th at Pier 45, curated by Poppy Juice. Some of you, I think, were at Little Island the other night. That Poppy Juice was who was playing afterwards. They were a lot of fun. We have Broadway by the Boardwalk. We're announcing our series up for Pier Clinton Cove. Even if you are not a Broadway fan, honestly, we have stellar people. I can't name names tonight, but Tony Award winners, Grammy Award winners, big deal people. And it's a really great concert series. We inaugurated it last year. It's worth coming to, even though I know it's uptown for some of you at 57th Street. As I discussed, Chelsea Piers has almost finished their improvements for some of the access improvements that we required in the lease that we talked about with all of you. I think they make a very big difference. They're going to be adding some signage, but this is a huge improvement. And I think you've had enough of me today.
Questions?
Yeah.
Large conversation, I spoke about it, not this month at the trust board meeting, but the month before. What is the status of P3 and the space? We're in June, so obviously I'm hoping that their summer programming is okay, but now.
Yeah, so we committed, their permit continues through late August. We built that into this as we figured that we were going through the RFP vetting process. I am not part of a selection committee. That is not unusual. I'm never part of a selection committee very much. So the team has been going through the interviews with the respondents. they have some follow-up questions. I think we are still aiming to finish that question process roughly by the end of the month so that we can then go to the paper permit discussion process with whoever's selected.
My only comment is I've already signed my kids up for fall sports. The school year ends in 2 weeks. For
We
the
knew
most
this. I
part,
mean,
so
the fact is that
it's
there was a
over.
series of stuff that was triggered when this all started. We extended the permit. We had to do a public process. We're engaged in it. And what can I say? I mean, nobody's guaranteed to be somewhere forever with no, you
Yes.
know, with,
I
you know,
understand
so
your
we're,
perspective on looking at it from a parent.
yeah,
and
no,
family
so we
perspective.
understood that, which is why we extended the termination date through August, when we think we will be done with our process well in advance of that.
Okay.
Peter?
Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, thanks, Maria. I just want to
You're
ask.
respondent, just for clarity.
Yes, yes. All right, so I represent Greenwich Village Little League.
Say who you are, because we'll need it for the record.
Peter Marino. I represent Greenwich Village Little League on the advisory council, but I am also executive director of P3, which is one of the respondents to the RFP. I just wanted to note and maybe ask if there's anything you can say about the seeming recent extension, because when we, went through the RFP, the feedback we were getting was that we were looking at getting a resolution around Memorial Day, which kind of fit well with our planning. Now that it's seeming to extend about another month or so, that's really sort of getting into.
I can't comment. We have, I mean, the responses came in, questions were needed to be asked with respect to the responses. If people didn't feel that they understood everything, they have to go back and understand things. And there's a whole big park that's being operated with other things happening as well. So no, I don't know the specifics of what, because I'm not on the selection committee, but our team knows that there are people that are employed, there are parents, and yet we have to go through our process.
Oh, Let's
know.
do Joanne online and then you.
I just wanted to follow up on Pete, because I back it up, because I get a lot of information from Robert. And I think some of the confusion might have been in meetings that were here, that it's imminent next week, then a month passes. And then, at Little Island, which I was at, Robert said early this week. And I think what happens is I communicate that, and that could be dangerous. And so we have a lot of anxious people, and one of them who I saw at the GVL volunteer party is Joanna. So you're going to hear from Joanna, but Joanna is also the P3 board, so you have to actually, Joanna, just make sure that you make that clear. So there's confusion, but I think it's also coming a little bit from.
So Robert's also not part of the selection committee. I did, coming here tonight, meet with the person, who is like the even within the trust. I'm not allowed to answer RFP questions. Like in public procurement land, we're very formal. I've not been saying, hey, how's it going? What did they say? Whatever. I don't know. I literally don't know. However, before this meeting, I touched base to see where they were. I know that there are some follow-up questions. Robert may not have done that, and he's not really, frankly, supposed to do that.
Right.
So good for Robert, but I get your point, Daniel, that perhaps, we need to be more.
I think that's where some of the anxiety is coming. That's all I'm
I get it.
And I will honestly say, I relate the same thing when I hear it at the board meeting, at the trust board meeting, whereas we're working on it and it should be coming out imminently or soon. or
Shortly, but that's in an eye of the beholder, right? I doubt we gave a date. I
No,
know
there's
that,
no date,
I know
but-
that, Peter, at the beginning, we hoped that, we were probably a little overly optimistic. Nevertheless, this is still on speed dial for a public procurement. Gansevoort was way earlier than that, and I'm just giving you a name now. Sorry.
All right, Joanne, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Hi, my name is Joanna Casenza-Lascas. I am on the board of P3, as well as just, a community member that's impacted by the, uncertainty that's going on with the space. And I guess, what I want to say is in response to the questions, there was a very detailed RFP issued. P3 responded with significant detail. We answered every single question. We answered the follow-up questions, and now with additional questions coming at this late stage of the game when we had expected to be hearing about a decision. And that's based on, what was told to us during the interview process was that the decision would be in a couple weeks. But then a couple weeks later, we're getting more questions that,
Joanne,
it's,
yeah,
I
is
just
it-
want to be on record as saying that I think that these additional questions are hindering the process. I don't think that they're actually helping the process. And the community support for P3 maintaining the state.
Joanna, I cut you off and I apologize, but I hear where you're going, but the advisory council is not in the RFP process here. And I want you to just, if it's about the process, like Noreen has already said, she can't disclose details, she doesn't know details. We want to help you the best way that we can help everybody in the community. And I didn't mean to like cut you off so hard, but if you have questions about that can be answered, absolutely, let's get some answers. But if it's about the specific details in the process, it's gonna be more frustrating to get it all out and then hear, sorry, I can't say anything.
And I'm also going to just add, because I can't help myself, you're annoyed that we're asking more questions. This is rent-free space on public property. It is our job to make sure we understand the proposal. I appreciate that no doubt you all put tons of effort into trying to anticipate every question we could have, but you may not have. So I'm sorry, but my team has to do their job and they will ask more questions. I know that they are aware that they want to do that expediently, and I think that it is going to be this week that they're back in touch. And we're trying to wrap this up as quickly as we can.
Sure, and please give me an opportunity to say, it's not that I'm annoyed that there are more questions, and it's not that I'm looking for answers from this group. But as the advisory council, I do want you to hear that I think that there is a little frustration with the process and that the timeline does, seem to not track with what we had expected, and that impacts our ability to function and serve the community. I guess that's really all that I wanted to say.
I think, Joanna, what you're saying is what we echo as well on the advisory council. It was a concern that we raised in the very beginning with Maureen knows. We said it at the trust board meeting, I think March or April, I can't remember when we first talked about it, maybe March, about an expedient process that moved along quickly because it's, again, end of school year, families and everything, we're all on that same page for engagement purposes. So I'm appreciative of you coming tonight and saying it. I think we are all on that page. And my only hope is that the resulting information will be done long before any of us break for the school year. And I break in 10 days.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Thank you guys for.
Just about Benvenuto, and in the last meeting, Noreen, we spoke about the problems that we've heard from Drift In. They've kind of opened up that second bar. We've heard music a block away as far as Pier 45, or a block and a half away. And I just want to make sure that at God's board, Benvenuto, I know they're serving alcohol, but are they going to be playing music as well?
I actually don't know the answer, but unlike Drift In, there is no sort of large table and chair area. It's a different physical setup. So while I think there has to be a demarcated area for any alcohol, it is a contained area. It's not like walk around Gansevoort with your beer, right?
Right, so such a passive space. It's so nice and pleasurable. It'd be really upset if it was music that everyone can.
No, I hear you on that. It's a good flag. I'll raise that.
Yeah, one of the nicest things is being on the bench on the west side.
Yeah.
Where you hear no traffic, you hear nothing, and then it's just gorgeous.
I think it's a good question, Daniel.
Yeah.
Any, go ahead, Alan.
Because it's sort of, I'm not that familiar with what's happening with that, but it sort of reminds me of the Pier 62 when we wanted to put in that bear garden.
It's totally different. This is the park building. We built it with a concession. And we heard from many people that they hope that, like in Europe, you'd be able to have a wine or a beer and and get a popsicle or whatever it is, right? It's not at all the same kind of thing, where we were proposing a beer garden after the fact of a already designed pier. This has a walk-up concession, no tables inside, and a small area outside.
Beer and popsicles.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yes.
We're
Beer
good.
popsicles.
Oh, no, good. Beers and popsicles. I like it. Alrighty. Does anybody else have any other questions? If not, I'd love to take a motion to adjourn. Move to adjourn. Oh, I assumed we're done. Okay, fantastic. Motion moved. Give a second and thank you, everybody. Long meeting, was really productive.
Thank you.
See you all September 9th. Have a great summer and see you in the park.
So did you folks find out?
That it was